In a world where bourbon brands slap $100 labels on swagger and hype, the true champions of flavor, proof, and age are collecting dust for a quarter of the price, right under your nose. These 5 bottles look like bargains, but taste like they broke the bank, overthrowing brands twice their cost in blind taste tests. So what are the specs no one's telling you about? And why has no one noticed these value kings until now? Old Granddad 114 doesn't just sit on the shelf, it dares you to compare. This bottle clocks in at a fiery 114 proof, 57% alcohol by volume, and it is built on a high rye mash bill that delivers a punch most $80 bottles can only dream about. At just $30, you get a glass full of raw power, cinnamon spice, roasted peanut, and a dry oak finish that lingers long after the sip. Reviewers call it a proof monster for good reason. The heat is bold but never harsh, and the flavors hit with a depth that outclasses plenty of so-called premium craft releases. Blind tastings often reveal the secret. When the labels are covered, this bourbon's intensity and spice fool even seasoned drinkers into guessing a far higher price tag. Some tasters even mistake it for limited edition barrel strength bottles. The secret is the recipe, about 27% rye in the mash, which gives it that signature kick and the peanut note that has become a cult favorite. While young craft distilleries charge double for high-proof bottles that can taste grainy or unfinished, Old Granddad 114 delivers the full package, rich, spicy, and unmistakably classic. For those who crave flavor that does not pull punches, this is proof that you do not have to spend big to drink big. The first value rule is simple. Never underestimate the power of a high-proof legend hiding in plain sight. Russell's Reserve 10-year sits quietly on the shelf, but its label tells a story most bourbon fans dream about. 10 full years in the barrel, bottled at 90 proof, and still found for around $40. In 2025, double-digit age statements have all but vanished from the budget aisle. Most brands reserve that kind of maturity for limited releases or chase bottles that command $60, $80, even $100. Yet here it is, overlooked and underpriced. The magic of Russell's 10 comes from patience. A decade of slow aging draws deep oak, leather, and dark caramel from the barrel. Each sip offers layers of dried fruit, toasted spice, and a finish that lingers with mature wood and a hint of tobacco. These are flavors that usually belong to bottles locked behind glass or sold with a premium story. But Russell's Reserve keeps things honest. Small batch, old school methods, nothing fancy except the whiskey itself. Blind tasting panels have put Russell's 10 up against big names like Eagle Rare and found it just as complex, sometimes richer. Reviewers point to its balance, not too sweet, never thin, with a backbone of seasoned oak that is rare below $50. In a world where age statements are disappearing or priced out of reach, this bottle stands as proof that true maturity does not have to break the bank. For anyone chasing depth and nuance without the hype, Russell's Reserve 10 is the quiet hero of the bourbon aisle. Evan Williams. Bottled in bond does not just promise value, it is built on a legal guarantee. For around $20, you get a bourbon that wears its credentials on the label, 100 proof, at least 4 years old, and made in a single distilling season by one distiller. That is not marketing fluff. It is the result of the Bottled in Bond Act of 1897, a law passed to protect whiskey drinkers from the fakes and shortcuts that once flooded the market. To this day, that white label means you are getting honest-to-goodness bourbon, untouched by flavoring or blending tricks. After the devastating Heaven Hill fire in 1996, the distillery doubled down on this promise. Instead of chasing after expensive, limited releases, they focused on keeping everyday drinkers supplied with real, bottled-in-bond whiskey. That decision turned Evan Williams' Bottled in Bond into a quiet champion of the bottom shelf. For bartenders and home mixers alike, this bottle is a workhorse, rich caramel, vanilla, and a backbone that stands up in any cocktail. Blind tastings and expert panels often rank it above pricier mainstream brands, especially when it comes to classic bourbon character. At $20, it is a lesson in how heritage and scale can deliver quality without the premium price tag. The label is not just old-fashioned, it is a trust mark. For anyone looking to stretch their dollar without sacrificing flavor, this is the bottle that proves great. Bourbon does not have to be rare or hyped. When you want your money's worth, Evan Williams. Bottled in bond is the budget king. Cooper's Craft Barrel Reserve 100 proof doesn't just stand out for its strength. It is a masterclass in barrel innovation. Brown-Forman's in-house Coopers took a deliberate gamble on engineering flavor, carving grooves into the inside of each American white oak barrel before the char. This chiseled approach increases the whiskey's contact with wood, pulling out layers of vanilla, butterscotch, and a signature creamy texture you would expect from bottles aged far longer or finished in expensive double-oaked casks. At just $32, this bottle delivers a depth and mouthfeel usually reserved for bourbons with a decade or more in the barrel. The process is not about shortcuts. It is about maximizing what the wood can give, using the same time-honored mash bill and proof. The result is a bourbon that coats the palate with rich sweetness, hints of toasted coconut, and a finish that lingers with soft spice and oak. Most distilleries would slap a premium label and a $60 price tag on a whiskey with this much character. Cooper's Craft keeps it accessible, banking on technique over hype. Reviewers and enthusiasts call out its unique viscosity, what some describe as pillowy or marshmallowy, that is rarely found in anything near this price. While the science behind the grooves remains a closely guarded secret, the effect is obvious in every sip, complexity, and smoothness that punch above its weight. For those who chase flavor experiments or want a pour that feels like a hidden trick of the trade, Cooper's Craft Barrel Reserve is the inventive underdog that proves innovation can be found right on the bottom shelf. Wild Turkey 101 stands as the bourbon world's gold standard for reliability, a bottle that has never blinked, never been watered down, and never chased trends. For about $25, you get 101 proof of true Kentucky character, built on a blend of barrels aged 6 to 8 years. That is not just a number on the label. It is a promise that has survived decades of industry shortcuts and cost-cutting. When other distilleries dropped their proofs in the lean years of the 1980s and the 1990s, Wild Turkey doubled down on flavor. Master distiller Jimmy Russell, a legend in his own right, refused to let corporate pressures dilute the whiskey's soul. He is publicly credited with keeping the proof high and the rye bold, protecting the signature Kentucky hug that warms your chest with every sip. This is not just nostalgia. The 101 recipe delivers a punch of caramel, vanilla, and spice that outclasses many so-called premium bottles. Reviewers and bartenders alike call it the benchmark for boldness. If you want to know how a classic bourbon should taste, you start here. The consistency is no accident. Wild Turkey's team blends for taste, not for mass-market blandness. Each batch is checked by the Russells themselves, ensuring that every pour lives up to its legacy. Put this juice in a fancy decanter, give it an exotic name, and nobody would blink at a $65 price tag. Instead, it sits quietly on the bottom shelf, waiting for those in the know. The value is not just in the price, it is in the trust that every bottle will deliver the same rich, spicy, full-bodied experience, year after year. That is why Wild Turkey 101 does not just make the list, it wears the crown. Consistency and character, and a price that defies logic. This is the bourbon that proves reliability is the ultimate luxury. Today, bourbon inflation pushes new releases past $80, but heritage distilleries still deliver world-class bottles for a fraction of the price. The real test isn't hype, it's what is in your glass right now. The best value may be hiding in plain sight. Which bottle wins your shelf space?